Hi, my name is Bhanu Prakash. I'm having around 10 years of experience in Java, Struts, Spring, Spring Boot, Spring Microservices, as well as I'm having a experience in Oracle technologies like Oracle Web Center Sites, Web Center Portal, and Identity and Access Management. In today's session, we are going to see about the JWT token and integration with the Spring Boot with the JWT token. So this is the agenda: introduction to JWT token, JSON web token. What's the difference between authorization and authentication? What is a JWT? JWT structure and the claims. Why use JWT? Why we have to use the JWT? JWT authentication flow. Spring Boot components, as you know, typically Spring Boot is you will be having a controller. Controller will be calling the service. Service will be calling the repository, like example JPA repository or Hibernate. And finally, it will be interacting with the database. JWT service overview, security configuration, filter, JWT filter functionality. As you know, as most of you are familiar with the servlet filter. Okay. Similarly, we can write our own filter using JWT filter, where you can extract the username and put it in the context. Next one is authorization service logic. Securing endpoints. That means before calling the any endpoint, you have to authenticate the user and you have to check the permissions. If the user is authenticated and have the particular permissions, then only you can access the particular resource. Token expiry. For every token there will be an expiry. You can set it. It can be a 10 minutes, it can be a 15 minutes, it can be a 1 hour, depends upon your requirement. And you can refresh the token, where you can once the token has been expired and if you want to refresh it, you can refresh it. And some of the best practices. Let me see what's the difference between the authentication versus authorization. Authentication typically is whenever you are passing the username and password, you will be validating that against the database or ID store like Oracle Identity and Access Manager, Okta, etc. And if the user is authenticated, then you can move forward. Okay. Authorization, whether you will be seeing that whether the user has a particular authorized to view these resources, whether the user has a permissions. Let me assume that typically an admin who has a permission where he can create an user, delete the user, update the user, okay, register the user. Next one is, for example, that can be a role like I want to view an order. Okay, whether you have a particular role to view an order, process the order, etc. So based on your role, you can be able to access the particular resource. Okay, and before authorization, you have to make sure that the user has been successfully authenticated. Okay. The next one is, what is a JWT? JWT stands for JSON Web Token, a compact and URL safer token format. It secures, transmits information between a server and a client, primary for the authentication. Widely used in mobile apps, SPA, single page application, and it is extensively used in your microservices and modern REST API. After user login, the server generates a JWT and sends it to the client. The client receives the JWT token and he will be passing in a header as an authentication. It's a bearer token you have to pass, and whenever the server receives, it validates the particular token. If the token is valid, then only you should able to access the particular resource. Otherwise, it will say forbidden. The next, this is how your JWT structure. JWT has been divided into three parts. One is header, body, and the signature. Header is typically you will be using the HS256 algorithm to encrypt the payload, actual payload what you are sending, like claims which user information like username, roles. Okay. And also you can have the other information, user information, and you can customize like token, other stuff. Signature, whenever you are sending the JWT token, you will be having a signature and it will be validate against the JWKS, that is JSON Web Token keys. Okay. Types of a claims: registered claims. These are predefined claims like issue, issuer, subject, expiry time, etc. Public claims: customer claims created generally used that anyone can understand, such as user profile, what is the username, what is the first name, what is the user login name, last name, email, etc. Private claims: claims shared privately between two parties, including a sensitive information, user ID, roles, etc. Why JWT? Why we have to go for a JWT? Basically, remember, JWT is a stateless, eliminates the need server-side session storage, which improves the scalability. It is well suited. It's a very well used in the microservices architecture, allowing independent service to authenticate user without centralized state. JWT tokens are secure due to the cryptographic signing, preventing tampering and ensure the data integrity. The token format is compatible and URL safe, making it fast for transmission in the HTTP headers. JWT works seamlessly across device platform, including, as I told, it can be used extensive use in your SPA applications, microservices, etc. Cross-platform authentication. This is why we have to go for a JWT. JWT authentication flow. This is, I'm taking a one use case, okay, and explaining based on that. User login request. User first, let's assume that user sends the username, password. You will be validating against the database or any ID store like Okta, Oracle Identity Access Manager. Okay. Then if the user is valid, it will verify whether the user, whatever the credentials he has sent, is a valid or not. And upon the validation of the user authenticator, then JWT token will be generated and it is sent back. Using this token, okay, typically you will be passing this token in your header, bearer token, to in the token, and you will be calling the actual access the particular resource. Client sends the token and the token is received at the server. For each request, the token, it checks the validity and whether the token is the valid one or not, expiry and everything, and see that if it is a valid token, then you will be able to access the particular resource. So this, as I told, Spring Boot components, your entity is typically a kind of a table. For example, customer entity, student entity, order entity, okay, user entity, etc. Repositories typically represents of your like ORM, like JPA repository, Hibernate, etc. And handles the database operations like fetch. You can fetch, find by primary key, find by username, query, create, update, delete, etc. JWT service typically generates the token, validates the token, okay, etc. Next one is authentication service, where you will be having the encrypt passwords, okay, credentials, etc., which we have seen in the last session on the Spring security. For more information, you can refer to my previous videos in Spring security. You can see what is this bcrypt and other encrypt passwords, how you can do. JWT authenticator filter. This is basically an HTTP request which comes where you will be taking the username, okay, and set it in the user security context, which we will be seeing with an example. JWT service generates a JWT token after successful user authentication. You will be generating using this service. You will be generating the token, validates the token, okay, whether the token is valid or not. It has whether the token has already expired or not, okay, and whether it is an unauthorized access. Validates the token, checking the signature integrity, as I told. So there are three parts to your JWT. One is your header, body, and the signature. So in the signature, what it gets, the signature validates with the your JWT KS, whether the whatever the signature it validates. So once it is a valid OD, you have to move forward. Okay. The next one is claims. As I told, from the JWT is a JSON web this thing. You can get the as information, username, roles, email, first name, last name, roles, etc. Check token expiry, ensures the token is still valid. User library like JWT, JJ for the essential token creation and the parsing. Security configuration, disable the CRF protection. Since the REST API does not maintain any user sessions, this is not required, where we can disable it. Then define the user endpoints as login, registered, do not required this thing. We can like typically for the login, you don't want to apply this JWT. So you can say that ignore this, and remaining things, for example, any resource you are trying to access, you want to apply this token. Okay. Add a custom JWT token filter. That means, as I told, we can write our own filter. Okay. You can write the filter. Make sure that before calling the any of this resource, this filter executes and do the particular validation and other things. Configure the Spring security. As I told, the example which I have provided is via the Spring security. JWT filter, this is what actually it does. Intercepts each coming HTTP request except the login and registration endpoints. Extracts the JWT token from the header. Validates the token, whether it's a token, whatever the token you have sent before the each request, make sure that it's a valid token and it's not expired. Loads the user details. Okay, it loads all the user details and set the user in the context. Blocks the request when missing, invalid or expiry tokens, and returns you are not authorized. If the token is not valid or the token got expiry, it will say 401 you are not authorized to access this resource. Authentication service, user registers involves the encryption password using the bcrypt, or you can write your own password. During the login, authentication manager verifies the user credentials. It validates the username password. Upon successfully login, the user generates a JWT token and returns it. This token is sent. Okay, this token is sent in the like a bearer in the header, the bearer authentication. Okay, in the headers, this token is sent for before accessing any of the resource. The service integrates authentication login seamlessly with the Spring security and JWT mechanism. Securing endpoints, public versus protected endpoints. A public endpoint can be accessed anywhere without a token. Okay, as I told, auth/login. For that, you don't require a token. You have to pass the valid username password, which if the validate it validates the username password. If it's a validate, it validates that particular credentials. If it's a valid, and returns you the token. Protected endpoints, these are the endpoints where you have to pass the JWT token, mandatory. This separates helps the safeguards the sensitive data and the system resource. This is very, very important. It safeguards the sensitive data. Protect endpoints, enforcing the security policy dynamically based on the token validation. Failure conditions, for example, as we have seen, 401 unauthorized, failure to protect, that lead breaches, unauthorized, all those stuff. Access token expiry, and this access token expiry quickly, typically in 15 minutes to 1 hour. You can easily configure whether based on your requirements, whether your token is valid for 1 hour, 15 minutes, you can set. Short lifespan limits damage if the token is compromised. Forces client to regularly prove authentication. Helps maintain a secure session without a server side storage. Refresh the token have longer life, often 1 to 7 days. User to request new tokens without the re-login. Improved user experience by reducing the frequent logins. Enhance security by separated access and reference credentials. Summary and the best practices. JWT, as I told, we have discussed, JWT is a stateless, scalable, secure authentication for web, mobile and the microservices. Always use HTTPS to protect the tokens during the transmission and prevent interception. Keep token expiry times shorter, like it can be between 5 minutes, 15 minutes to 1 hour. Avoid storing JWT in the local storage to prevent the cross-site scripting. Okay, you have to avoid, don't store these tokens anywhere. Use refresh token to maintain user sessions securely without frequent relogin. Okay, so this is some of the theory where we have seen the about the what is a JWT, what is a JWT token, and next one is the Spring components, how we can easily integrate this JWT token in the Spring security. Okay, and we have seen the structure of the JWT, okay, JSON web token, etc. Now let me see an example. Okay, I have taken a simple example to explain about the JWT token using the Spring Boot. Okay, so here is a POM file. Here you can see I'm using the 3.5.x Spring Boot. JDK Java version is 17. Here these are the starter files in Spring Boot starter web. The next one is Spring security. As I told, this we have integrated with the Spring security. These are the dependencies. Here I am using IO JWS web token, JWT token. The next one is IO JSON web token. Okay, all this you have to include. The next one is, this is Lombok for the setters and getters. Okay, so this is the version which we have used, and this is the main class, your JWT application. Okay, security configuration. Here you can see, because for the REST service I want to disable this CSRF. I want telling the disable. As I told, /authorize this permit. For this I don't require. This is a public URL for which I don't require to pass a token. So I'm telling for /auth login, you can permit all. Any other request has to be authenticated. Okay, so before calling any other requested has to be authenticated, and here is a filter. Okay, let me see this which I have written the filter. Typically the filter is called before the each and every REST service, and it happens for the HTTP request. Okay, here you can see the bearer token you will be passing, header you will be getting the authorize, and bearer token, it should start the header. Bearer token you have to pass, it's a mandatory. Okay, and here there is a, I have written that validate token, where you will be passing the token and you will be validating. If the token is valid, then you will be getting the username, and finally this username you will be authenticate this one, username password authenticated, and storing in the context. Okay, and filter chain, do filter. Okay, so this is a filter, how it will look like. So JWT filter and authentication manager. Here this is the basically authentication manager. You pass the authentication configuration. The next one is, this is the main class, where just I have given, as I told, this auth/login. Okay, for this we don't require. Here I haven't integrated with the, typically you'll be integrating with this database or any backend system like Oracle Access and Identity Manager, Okta, which supports. Okay, but because this just now, for now I'm telling that here hard coded like admin and password. Okay, so here there is a something, if the username and password is matching, then you generate a token and return back. If it is not matching, you say that invalid credentials. And for our demo purpose, this is the same. So accessing this resource, you have to pass a JWT token. So let me see, this is the auth request, where you will be passing the username password. Here you can see in the controller we are using this auth request, and finally you will be passing the auth response. Here auth response, this is the token, you will get it. And this is very, very critical. Here I have written one utility method where you will be having the JWT util. This is @component. Okay, here you can see some secret. This is very long, this one. Expiry, here you can see 1 hour, and key you can return this. And generate token, this is a utility method where I am using JWTS. Okay, builder set subject username. issuer new date, expiry as I told here 1 hour, sign in with get key, signature HS256 algorithm, extract the username where you pass the token, it parses the JWT token and finally it returns you the username. And validate token, here you can see parse set sign in, get key, parse claims and the token. If it is this one, you return true. If some exception or something, it returns the false. Okay, so let me see a quick demo. Here is the utility methods: generate token, extract the username and the validate token. Okay, now let me see. Here I have written one collections. So here you can see. Okay, so here you can see the endpoint, auth/login, and the body I'm passing as a admin and password. So once you click on the send, here you can see it has generated a token. Let me assume that I pass the invalid credentials. You should see a valid this thing, like you are here you can see for this thing 403 access of this is prohibited. Okay, and here I am passing this username password because I am sending a valid credentials. Here it is generated the token, take this token, and here you can see this is the resource. If you see, right, hello auth, and here is the, if you see in the header, as I told, this is a bearer token where we have to pass. Okay, so if you pass a valid token, then you should able to see. Here you can see. Okay, let me assume that I have passed the invalid token or something. You will see a valid error message, something like this is I have tampering. Okay, you send it, then it will say that 403. Okay, this is not a valid token. So this is how actually typically. So what you will be doing is, first you will be passing the credentials, you will be getting the token, and you pass the token this thing before. It's a mandatory that if you are implementing the JWT token, you have to token pass as a bearer token in your request. So your filter, what it will do is any HTTP request it comes, it checks whether the authentication key is there in your header. If the authentication key there is a bearer, then it will take the bearer token, and the bearer token, it validates the token whether it's a validate token or not. Okay, it generates the, sorry, it doesn't checks whether it takes that particular request and validate. Here you can see that typically what is happening. Okay, here it extracts the if it's a validates the token, if it's a validate, then you get the username, and that username you will be passing to the authentication token, and that you will be storing in the context. Okay, so in this way we have seen a simple example what is about the JWT token, what is the advantage of using the JWT token, what is the different, like the JWT token, what is the structure where you have a header, body and the signature. So this is about the JWT and how we can integrate it. Thank you.